Well, hello and welcome to Bingewatch, the podcast where we take a look at the hottest new TV and film releases on streaming television platforms. I'm Hannah Fernando, the group editor of Woman and Woman and Home magazine.
And I'm Ian McEwan, writer on TV Times, TV and Satellite Week and What's on TV magazines. And today we're looking at the new releases for the week starting Friday the 10th of November 2023, including Brian Cox's James Bond-themed challenge show 007 Road to a Million on Prime Video, and a new Robbie Williams documentary series on Netflix.
And we'll also be checking out the new Disney Plus action thriller Culprits, starring Gemma Arterton and Nathan Stewart Jarrett, and Apple TV Plus's period drama The Buccaneers. But first, Ian, what is in the news?
Prime Video's three-part documentary, John Lennon, Murder Without a Trial, narrated by Kiefer Sutherland, will hear from John Lennon's friends, as well as lawyers, detectives and eyewitnesses, as it takes a fresh look at the Beatles' shocking murder in 1980. What else is in the news, Hannah?
Well, in Netflix's 6-part biopic Senna about Brazilian F1 star Ayrton Senna, of course, no less, Stephen McIntosh will play Frank Williams, who founded the Williams motor racing team.
Another good week. I know I say it every week, but it's actually true. We're going to start on Prime Video with a new reality series which arrives on Friday the 10th of November. It's called 007 Road to a Million. And here's a clip.
I put real people into a James Bond adventure and placed 10 questions around the world. If they find them, answer them, they win £1 million. The only thing standing in their way is me.
Bit of a weird one, this. It's hosted by the brilliant Brian Cox, who, of course, was the star of Succession and many other things. And he's great, actually. He brings a real kind of Bond villain vibe to proceedings. So it's a little bit like Race Across the World, that reality show where people team up and travel across the world. It's Bond themed, and it does have some exotic locations, but certainly in episode 1, I wouldn't say the challenges that these people have to undertake are that James Bond-ish. So yes, you've got teams of 2 basically. So some of them are related to each other, some of them are friends. I think there's a married couple. And we start in the Hebrides. Beautiful backdrop. What they need to do is they need to locate, it's a suitcase really, which is buried in a lock. And they drag it out, open the suitcase, and it's got a computer inside it which displays a question. If they get the answer right, they bank a certain amount of money. And if they get it wrong, they're out of the game. And there's £1 million up for grabs for each of the teams. Okay. I enjoyed it. You obviously get the backstory of the contestants. So we start off, there's a couple of cheeky chappies. There's 2 brothers from Croydon, and then there are 2 sisters who are taking part. I mean, I didn't think episode 1 it didn't really have anything to do with James Bond, I would have to say, but I did enjoy it as a challenge show. I think, judging from the kind of teaser clip you get at the beginning of episode 1, I think the stunts are going to get a bit more daring, a bit more out there. So yeah, I thought it was pretty enjoyable, and Brian Cox definitely ups the ante because he's sitting there with all these screens supposedly watching what they're all doing. And yeah, he's great as a kind of Bond type villain overseeing proceedings. What did you think, Hannah?
It's not what I expected. I'm not going to lie. I thought it was a bit odd, but and I sort of know what you mean about the James. I feel like it's quite tenuous, the link to Bond at times. But I like the idea of winning £1 million, and I like the idea that these people are, having to answer these 10 questions, which are quite tricky, really. Even if you are a major Bond fan. So yeah, it's. I get it. I think it will appeal to people. I think from my perspective, it just wasn't what I expected. I think Brian Cox is the kind of the key formula for this if it does work. And James Bond fans will tune in. So yeah, thumbs up. Just not quite what I thought.
Okay, well, this next thing probably is pretty much what you expected. It's a 4-part rockumentary series on Netflix, simply called Robbie Williams. It arrived on Wednesday the 8th of November, and here is a clip.
It's astounding what's happened in my life. But the past has me in a headlock. Something has to give. You know, you're only supposed to do this at the pearly gates of St. Peter.
Yes. So I was, and I think I've said this before, I've declared it, that I was a huge Take That fan back in the day. I don't think there was an inch of my wall that wasn't covered in images of them all, Robbie being my absolute favourite. And funnily enough, he's the only one of the crew that I haven't met, which is probably a good thing, isn't it? Because you don't want to burst that bubble. But I absolutely adored him, and I think probably I just love the fact that he was that bit different, and he just didn't quite fit the remit in the end, did he? And there's always, we see it time and again with these bands where somebody not necessarily goes off the rails, but in most cases they do, and they step away from the band, and you know the Samaritans have to set up a group for girls like me who just can't cope with them waltzing away into the sunset, but they always come back, and they 9 times out of 10 will become a solo artist, which of course is what Robbie Williams did. He really was a huge star. He still is a huge star. But what this does, and I don't think it matters whether you are a Take That fan or a Robbie fan particularly, because as we've said many times before, any of these kind of documentaries are, the music in itself kind of carries the whole thing, but also you get to learn so much. And I think this is, of course it's edited, it's highly edited, of course it's edited the way that the person starring in it wants it to be. Yes, I get all of that, but it is really candid, and it made me really sad because, you know, it sort of starts at the very beginning. He narrates the whole thing and sort of talks about his days and Take That, and how he just felt that he was not selling himself out, but there was no piece of him left for him. It was sort of everybody, he was giving and giving and giving, and everyone was taking and taking and taking. And I watched some of that footage of the band on stage. And, you know, I was probably one of those girls screaming in the crowds. And you imagine that level of adoration would carry you. But actually, it seemed to almost not bring him down, but he was a really unhappy soul. And every part of his life was scrutinised. He didn't feel he could trust anyone. He was, you know, cameras were absolutely everywhere. I mean, that's being famous, isn't it, for a lot of people? And there's something like 30,000 hours of footage that existed that he'd never actually seen before. And he watches some of it and he's very tearful in places. And we've seen a lot of Robbie recently. Of course, he's made the headlines because of this. So he's doing lots of interviews. But he, you know, just his body image, which you very often associate with women, and it's just absolutely not limited to women. It's just not. Robbie fell into this battle with his body of weight gain, weight loss, and we see him now, and he's really slim now. And the stuff that he's sort of done throughout his life that's led him to where he is now, and of course he's married, he's got children, he seems very happy, but those demons are always there, people say, haunting them. And I think it's very, very raw. It's very real. I felt like I came away knowing a slightly different person, and I felt really quite sad for him. I mean, of course, he's a mega celebrity with mega money and living his very best life. But as they always say, money doesn't buy happiness. And I think he comes over really well. But for me, seeing him as he started and seeing him now is just so, so different. And I don't just mean about the journey he's been on with fame, but also how he looks. He just looks so different. He's become a man, and he's kind of owning up and speaking honestly, which I think will help loads of other people. I really enjoyed it. What do you think, Ian? I
very much enjoyed it. I mean, it could be called Robbie Williams, My Struggle, really, couldn't it? Because it is a massive struggle. So I was very interested I've only watched episode 1, but the fact that he was so much younger than the rest of Take That was significant. And obviously he was thrown into this publicity machine and had this great pop stardom so young. And also the dynamic where the band, it was very much Gary Barlow's band, wasn't it? Like he was the songwriter, he was kind of like the leader, and you see there's some tension there. And it was just it was too much too young. Classic example of that. So there doesn't seem to be that much enjoyment going on. It's all pretty grim. And yeah, he gets heavily into drink and drugs. And I was interested to see him working with Guy Chambers, who he collaborated with. And when they were in the studio doing his first album, he was just drinking way too much, clearly quite challenging to work with. But he's just going off the rails, wasn't he? And it's interesting that was nearly a flop, that first album. It didn't sell many copies initially, but then it was Angels was the song that really took off. And from then on, he was on his way. But yeah, it's sad because I think because of everything that happened to him, because he was too young, and, with that life, it's easy to get into drink and drugs, isn't it? In excess and just behave like a complete idiot. And that I think is, obviously he's learned a lot from coming out the other side of that, but you kind of feel like he's quite a fragile character. He's obviously a lot wiser, whereas you had this really kind of cocky youngster, taking on the world. So it's also like, be careful what you wish for, because you see when Take That are on the road and they're doing all the interviews, being in a band and trying to make it, it's a slog. You're touring around, you're doing show after show after show, you're being dragged from one interview to the next. It's not as glamorous as people think, and there's no off switch. So yeah, I think he comes across very well, as you say. I mean, obviously the footage of him when he was younger, he can be quite obnoxious, but he was a teenager with loads of money and access to whatever he wanted. So yeah, I think it's a slightly different music documentary in that he's really kind of bearing his soul and kind of looking back and just explaining how it was a rocky ride, So yeah, recommended. Over on Disney Plus, arriving on Wednesday the 8th of November, we have a new drama series called Culprits, and here's a clip.
Joe, what are you not telling me?
Long before we met,
I did bad things.
we're in danger.
The kids.
I'm gonna fix this.
This is very, very good, I must say. And it starts in dramatic fashion. You see this middle-aged Italian gentleman sort of running out of his gorgeous villa, and he's in his dressing gown. Someone's chasing him with a gun. And he gets, this happens right at the beginning, so it's not really a spoiler. And he's gunned down next to his beautiful collection of sports cars. And you think, okay, intriguing start, slightly Godfather-esque. Then we cut to suburban America, and we've got this guy called Joe, played by Nathan Stewart Jarrett, who is terrific in this. And he's another person who got his big break in Misfits, which I'm always going on about. So he is living with his fiancée, Jules, played by Kevin Vidal. They have 2 kids, and they seem to be kind of living the suburban life. So you think, okay, well, what's the connection between that violent and dramatic opening scene and this apparently very humdrum existence? Well, all will be revealed because we're going to flash back. I don't really want to say too much. I don't want it because there's lots of fantastic twists and turns in this. It moves between London and America, moves backwards and forwards in time. Gemma Arterton plays a criminal mastermind called Diane Harewood. Yeah, I'm not going to say too much more about how it pans out, but what I will say is it's thrilling, it twists and turns, it's utterly convincing. It's got all the kind of elements of a great, almost like a gangster film or a heist movie. So many terrific elements thrown into the mix, and it's real white knuckle, edge of the seat stuff. Even in episode 1, there's just loads going on. It's so exciting. So I was very pleasantly surprised by this. I thought it was terrific. Yeah, a bit of Reservoir Dogs thrown in as well, you could say, or Baby Driver. So, yeah, loved it. Can't wait to see what happens. What did you think, Hannah?
There's a bit of a Reservoir Dogs vibe going on, isn't there? I never am a fan of these ones that jump forwards and backwards, but it works, doesn't it? Absolutely works, because you kind of almost need it, and you go from kind of quite thrilling moments to, it's kind of, we're sort of dodging around the storyline here. I appreciate that, but kind of you need it because they're so different, the worlds, and then how it all comes back together. I think it's quite thrilling in places. I think it's really exciting, and I think it's really different. And I think that's probably the thing that hit me the most, was actually this felt like something really quite different that no one's done for a while, and they've done it well.
Well, we're going to finish over on Apple TV Plus, Hannah, with a new period drama series which arrived on Wednesday. It's called The Buccaneers, and here's a clip.
Girls, here is to marriages, men, parties.
Not particularly in that order. But darlings, we always come first.
For certain girls of refinement, New York has become too limited.
I quite agree.
He insists that I invite you and your daughters to London.
London.
You did the right thing giving me this one to review, Ian. You know me too well. This is absolutely spot on. Loved it. If you're a Bridgerton lover, you'll absolutely love this too, I think. Exactly the same sort of premise. The debutante era, but with a twist. There's lots of things about Bridgerton and also the Buccaneers that are very, very similar. So obviously the timing, but also the modernity of the music. So you'll see tracks like Taylor Swift. It was slightly different in Bridgerton because they sort of did it more as musical. This is actual proper kind of pop songs singing through this, which makes it feel really lively, and makes it feel really fun. And I think that's what I really loved about this. It's just not heavy going at a time when we could really do without heavy going. Again, this is slightly different because this storyline is based on the Americans coming over to England in the 1870s. They're sent, the group of very wealthy American girls are sent by their mothers in the hope of securing aristocratic husbands. And it's based on an unfinished novel by the American author Edith Wharton. And it's, because obviously the Brits kind of bristling at the idea of these American girls, coming over and how brash they'll be. And they're not rewriting the rule book. They're not. It is what it is. People are romancing each other and the wrong ones fall in with love with the wrong people. And that makes it all the more interesting. But it's just that slightly different dynamic than your regular sort of historical drama, if you like. And that's fun-loving pop element, I think, really, really, I don't know, it just makes it exciting. You kind of want to sing along. It's upbeat, it's great, and there's lots of eye candy for everybody. Let me give you that little warning and that little tidbit too. So yeah, great big thumbs up from me. What are you thinking?
I didn't want to like it, I must admit, because it starts with the wedding, doesn't it, of Conchita, and the groom hasn't shown up, and then he does show up and he's not going to go through with it, but then he changes his mind, and I'm like, oh. And then there's a very excitable group of bridesmaids, and there's a meet cute with a good looking guy who's come to the wedding. But I must admit, it's pulled me in, and I started really enjoying it. It's just irresistible, really. It's got the wonderful Christina Hendricks of Mad Men fame. So she plays New York socialite, Mrs. St. George. And yes, after the wedding, the girls and a couple of the adults are invited over to London, and it's a bit like a sort of hen party on tour. You see them going along in their carriages and leaning out the window screaming. And yeah, there's some great culture clash comedy, because you've got these really snobby, straight-laced English aristos looking down their noses at this new money, you know, and these rather brash Americans. And yeah, I very much enjoyed it. And yeah, as you say, we really are in Bridgerton country here, both with the kind of the dialogue, the style of it, the music. But yeah, it's great stuff. I enjoyed it. Now we've got to that time, young Hannah, where you reveal what you've been binging on this week.
Well, it has been rather rainy and grey. So on that basis, I have been watching A Place in the Sun because that makes me feel happy. Although the people do irritate me sometimes because they seem to want an awful lot for their money. And they get quite crabby about people not refusing to drop their prices. Anyway, I was dreaming of being in a warmer clime last week. Also, Strictly, of course, Strictly. Every week I'm going to say Strictly. How about you, Ian?
I'm a bit addicted to the old true crime documentary series, as you know, and there's a very good one on Netflix called Till Murder Do Us Part, which is about this wealthy American couple who were murdered in their family home, and they had a daughter who'd been sent off to boarding school in England, who was a bit of a rebel and also speaks with quite a posh English accent. And at uni, she'd hooked up with this very nerdy German student called Jens. So it's looking at the trial. Both of them are accused, and it's really well done because it kind of makes you lean one way and then the other in terms of, okay, who was really responsible, who was there, who actually committed the murders. So yeah, if you like your true crime, check it out. We've just got time to look ahead to next week's offerings. So what are we going to be talking about, Hannah?
Keanu Reeves and Jensen Button tell one of Formula One's most incredible stories in Brawn, the Impossible Formula One Story, which will be on Disney+.
And yes, you'll be getting this one, Hannah. Elizabeth Debicki and Dominic West star in the heartbreaking final chapter of acclaimed royal drama The Crown on Netflix. It's here at last. So we look forward to those and much, much more. But in the meantime, keep watching.